Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets. It's your boy Road Dogg here with the tech master himself, Captain Karl at the helm. Big shooter. Welcome back to another great episode of Tech Talk with Karl. So here we are.
Oh, you got to frame that up. I just spent, you guys, Road Dogg and I just spent the last 10 minutes going, can you hear me? And then he could hear me, and we're texting back and forth, and it was a big gong show. We do the podcast live for some of our clients are all invited. We do some Q&A beforehand. The pre-show before the big show, as the Road Dogg calls it. But anyway, so yeah, Tech Talk with KB. Let's talk about let's do some tech.
Let's talk about, you know how we always, Karl, we talk about the future version of yourself, and it always look back and shake your head. Like, I know the future versions, and by future I mean next week version, are looking at the pre-show and thinking, amateur hour. Like, what is happening?
It was ugly, but I'm going to say that was not nothing sexy about that. All good shoots, all good.
Yeah,
actually, you know, we did do that this morning, but we both decided that in the future, right? Road Dogg sent me some stuff about the metaverse, and what I told him is that soon we'll be drinking beers with avatars instead of face to face. But the difference is, I'm going to make my avatar younger and better looking for sure, but I'm younger, better looking, and taller than his avatar. So what do you think about that?
Well, boom, you know what? What do I think of that? I think it's like George Costanza's opposite world. You know what I mean? That's what I think.
You think? That's actually, I might come back. I might make my avatar Kramer. I love Kramer. There you go. That's a good idea.
When he goes up to that girl and says, "Hi, my name is George. I'm unemployed and I live with my parents."
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that show. Beautiful. That's not a bad idea, shoots. There we go.
There you go. Yeah, I'll make myself. Never mind. I'm not even going to go there. Okay, listen. What we lack in terms of high production value, we're going to make up, folks, with actual value bombs that you can actually implement in your business. And I just want to. Last week we were obviously going over value from a business perspective. We got a bunch of questions in about how to add value personally. And people are just basically, they're looking for something like a framework or what exactly to elevate and just to help their clients elevate on a personal level. And by the way, when we're going there, Karl, like, I guess another add-on, which sort of a bonus here would be like, do you go there on a personal level? Like, is that something that you do? You know what I mean? Like, are they offended by that and like, hey, bugger off, I want to talk about business?
Like, do I get offended when you continually call me short? Okay, so last week we covered how to increase value. I provided a framework on how to increase value from a business perspective. So this is like personal, right? I'll tell you, Ray Dalio. I read this, I think it was yesterday or the day before, but floating. Ray Dalio, just be radically open-minded. Something to that, and again, not those exact words, but that's definitely the premise. Greater value is going to come from expansion versus limiting yourself to what you already know, right? Like, sounds so obvious, but very few doing it. Like, the number, we've talked about this is a long time ago, but being conscientious is absolutely critical. So look, okay, so but closed-minded, again, that could be like a bit of a throwaway line, a bit of a platitude. Like, what's being closed-minded? I'll tell you, like, somebody who doesn't want their ideas challenged. So just think of the idiot on Facebook who's either pro or anti-vax or, pro this political party and anti that political party. And they just want to tell you how to think, right? So they don't like their ideas being challenged, right? This might be, this is someone who's closed-minded and This is a challenge. They make statements more than they ask questions. You got two ears and one mouth. We've all heard that. But again, my question is that when you're talking to, business owners, folks more successful than you, are you doing a lot of talking? You're doing a lot of listening. Do you block others from speaking, right? Like think of the interrupter. It's one thing, like here's a bit of a hack. Let's say somebody's speaking and now you need to get in, right? Because there's not enough time. You're trying to sell them coaching and you only got an hour, and it's coming towards the end and you got to get in. What you do is if you do interrupt them, don't go to yourself. You've got to go to them. Super duper important. But the bottom line is we've all spoken to that person, just the know-it-all, they're kind of blocking you from speaking, focusing, more on being understood than trying to understand, right? Like to be efficient, you can't let your need for what's right be more important than what's true, right? This is again, Ray Dalio would just whisper that straight into your said differently, being, too proud or too good for others comes at a cost of making inferior decisions, and inferior decisions will cost you money. Because I think that people are less fear of making inferior decisions than they are losing money. So I want to kind of anchor that. But look, okay, so let's go personally. Look, I tell you this, there's four types of value that you have personally, right? Of course, from a business standpoint, where you're looking to come into a company or you own a company, how do you do it? Execution and implementation is kind of like the lowest level. And then there's leadership / management, I guess. The third level, and as you move up, you've got communication and influence. And the highest, like the fourth level, is imagination and curiosity, right? So just hammer down on those implementations. If you get paid to work at Starbucks, or you work for the roofing company, or you work for the company, or you work for the landscaper, right? Execution is the level you do at it, but you're ultimately in charge of implementation. You're probably not going to get paid very well. Let's assume, I don't know, $20,000 to you'd max out at $100,000, I'd say, right? So then the second level is leadership. You lead people, right? Your management. You're the manager at Starbucks. You're the foreman of the construction crew, right? You're leading people in number one, which is you're leading people to implement, right? Let's assume that you could make a couple $100,000 a year doing this, but then you move up and you go to communication influence, right? So this is level 3 is the salesperson. It's the CEO. It's the magician, the actor, the singer. You're earning money with your mouth, your body language, and maybe all summed up your ability to communicate. Right? Because again, communication is 7% of what you say, and then 93% is all the other stuff, the tonality, your body language, what have you. Huge upside when you go from level 2 to level 3 and you get paid to communicate and influence people. The upside is semi-immeasurable. But level 4, which is where I think people want to get to, and I talk about this all the time, I want you to think of imagination and creation. I've often said, like, the most profitable word in the world, maybe that's debatable, but it's pretty damn close. The word create. Okay. So the action of creation, you create the movie, you create the company, you're working for the company. And again, but whenever my mentor will say this to me all the time, like he goes, you got to become the plug, right? So imagine working for a company and becoming so valuable that they can't let you go, right? Like that's kind of where, you in order to do that, you'd have to be using your imagination or you wouldn't become the plug. You make money with your creativity. You create the software. I say you create the company. Like Steve Jobs created the iPhone and the iPad. Like they did not exist. And in between his ears, he imagined it. And there's a good chance you're listening to me on your iPhone now, right? Ray Kroc. You've probably seen the movie Founder. Awesome movie. I've seen it countless times. It's my go-to movie. When I need to fall asleep, I turn on the Founder because I've seen it so many times. I can almost do it word for word. Great movie. He saw their system. He saw something they didn't see with his imagination. He showed back up franchise, right? Anyway, Zuck created Facebook, Benioff, Salesforce. Michael Dell, who's a total stud, unbelievable operation. Dell Computers, he's a stud. I just created group coaching software. In between my ear, the massive problem that we have is we have coaches that make multiple, we have lots of coaches getting going, but we have multiple 6 and 7 figure coaches. Well, the problem that they have is they have no time, right? Like they hit that ceiling at 200, 400, 600 grand a year. They want to get to 7 figures. They want to get to $1 million, but they've only got so much time, right? So in my head, I'm like, this is what I refer to it as the bow in our internal communication. Won't get into that. But group coaching software, it was a 4 a.m. kind of, oh my God, wake up, here's the bow. And I just said, boom, called the guys first thing in the morning and said, look at this. And so bottom line, your imagination and your creativity is the most valuable asset you possess, right? So maybe, so that's I would dare say that people are not using their imagination on the level that they should, right? Like the guy who doesn't go on vacation, right? He doesn't realize he's costing himself money by not going on vacation, because ultimately imagination is where the magic is, right? So look, break it down into its constituent parts. 1, execution, implementation. Okay. 2, leadership / management. So now you become the boss at Starbucks, the boss at Walmart, the foreman of the construction crew, the owner, the CEO of the company, right? 3, like you can become the CEO and then not be good at number 3, not use communication influence. This is the guy who this is on, like the E-Myth, right? They talk about, what is it, Road Dog? It's the, the guy who's just good at doing the thing and then he creates the business doing the thing. Well, unless he can use his skills his personal skills to influence, he's never going to build a real company. He's just a plumber that pretends like he owns a company, but he's actually running around doing the plumbing. Right? Is that what you call it? He's doing the plumbing, right? But then 4, constituent parts. Number 4 is where the magic is, and you can do this. You could be working at McDonald's and then create something magical and new. I don't know. You could jump 2 and 3 and have some magic happen. A little bit like Ray Kroc. He didn't even work at McDonald's, right? And all of a sudden he came in with a better idea and he was an owner straight away, kind of became the plug. But anyway, so, Road Dog, that's it. Your communication, your communication is important, but your imagination is your ultimate asset. And I would dare say that when somebody's asking me, like on a personal level, how do I create more value? That's how you do it, and you know what? It starts in between your ears, and what do they say? Proximity is power, right? Like, who are you spending time with? What's the community that you're spending time with would be my question, right? If you want to have more, do more, and be more, it all starts with that little voice in between your ears. Society, I wrote this on Facebook a bit ago. A society that profits from your self-doubt. What is it? Believing and liking yourself is like a rebellious act, right? Like Road Dog, would your life be different if somebody was fueled by haters and doubters versus scared of them and beaten down by them, including people maybe close to you? Like if you used I'm just going to say the hater, right? If you use that as fuel, wouldn't that be like a different life? The ultimate business addiction is next. So, your ability to focus, maybe I should put that in there somewhere, Road Dog, like on a personal level, the way that you bring value is debatably to use your imagination and work out what you're going to bring, but then to focus, and really do it at a high level. So that's what I'm going to say, Road Dog. I think that's a great question. I like that. But that's my answer, bud. What do you think?
Can you give us an example of this personal value / imagination in action? Like, so we all can kind of get a metaphor or an example to leverage?
Yeah, good idea. This morning, so internally we're having a group meeting, and we were going over creating an outbound sales process, right? Without going into the finer details, really doesn't matter what that's what we were looking to do, right? Outbound sales process was the learning objective, the goal. At the end of the meeting, we wanted to have it, right? So you got to start little red arrow. You are here, right? Understanding that versus doing a LinkedIn ad campaign, a Facebook ad campaign. The guy going to TikTok doing that, that's driving traffic to us. This is, this is what we were creating is something where people are reaching out. You got to accept that it's slower. It's going to be like a 90-day process to get traction. So therefore, patience is going to be necessary. But I'll tell you that it's predictable, it's reliable, it's stable when you don't have to rely on, when you're, just think picking up the phone and making things happen in personal messages, right? Text and that sort of thing. So here's what we kind of loosely agreed. Like off the top of my head, like we had to create a sales process, right? And by the way, is it going to be 2-step, 3-step, 4-step before we could take the next, continue on? You need a hook. Without a hook, no, sales process is going to work. We need an opening script. You need a closing script. When you're doing closing, what's going to happen? You're going to get objections. Most people try to avoid objections. You start getting objections. This is a good thing because this is the person actually thinking through buying with you. So we need to have a way to combat those objections, to successfully, combat them. Before we get started, we need data. Once you get data, like on our software, we've got, we build live lists for our business coaches. Well, we've got the data, but what's the next step? You got to cleanse the data, right? So in other words, is this, just because you go buy data, it doesn't mean that it's actually going to work, right? So you got to cleanse that data, know how to do that. Therefore, what are you going to do? You're going to have a list created. You need to have a compensation plan. Compensation is basically, what's the incentive framework? Like I think this is Charlie Munger. What does he say? Show me the incentives and I'll show you the result, right? The world is built in and around incentives, right? So whenever putting something together, you want to hire somebody, just show me the incentives and I'll show you what it's going to look like in the end, your end result. Most people are looking, what do I mean by that? Most people are looking for a salesperson. They're like, well, look, I'll just pay him on results. Well, that's the quality that you get, right? That incentive program needs to look right. You're going to need to ultimately build a sales team. So once one person is successful, how are we going to, leverage that and build it out? And by the way, we're going to need to train that team, and we're going to need a framework to do so. Should we do that now? Should we do that first, or should we wait until we have success? So that, I don't know, like framework, maybe what I'm trying to say here, Road Dog, like that, we built what I just did, what we did this morning. I got to tell you, I started we need to create a framework. So before we go any further, let's create a framework. And then what we let happen is the imagination overlays the framework. Does that make sense? Like imagination is the great hook. It's the great close. It's a great way to close. And a great way to close is to create payment terms. Instead of lowering your price or giving a lower option, use the same price, but just give a different way of paying, right? So like, say it's 10 grand, they could pay 5 grand up front and then pay $1,000 a month for 5 months. Or they could pay a month, $12,000 over 10 months. So they'll pay 20% more, but they can start at only, roughly $1,000 in month 1, right? And then give them another option where they put $2,500 down and then pay $2,500 at the 3-month mark, 6-month mark, 9-month mark, and the 12-month mark, to realize the whole payment. So give them different payment options as opposed to lowering, the program. But bottom line is that took some imagination. Like, how do we do it? Right. So, and by the way, Road Dog, like that's a big reason why we created Profit Acceleration software, right? So our coaches have a framework, and then they can use their imagination layered over top of Profit Acceleration and Digital Acceleration. And of course, our new group coaching software, right? And then they can be dangerous. But leaving, in closing, Road Dog, leaving your imagination to just run wild could very likely leave you in next land, right? Like I said just a second ago, the biggest addiction in business is next. You need to avoid that, right? You want to be able to focus. So imagination, just unfiltered, uncontrolled, unfocused, can be a liability. But a framework plus imagination, I think, can be a little bit of magic. So there you go, Road Dog. That's how I'd answer that, bud. But create a framework and then use imagination over top. What do you think?
Just real quick, I want to follow up on something else here real quick, but on the payment option thing. So one thing I saw on a sales letter, a sales page, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, and it's from Billy Jean is Marketing. So shout out to Billy Jean. So he had his price, And then it was like $5,000 or whatever it was, right? And
Yep.
he said, while our price is never negotiable, our payment terms are. And I was like, wow, like talk about just the ultimate, like, here, this is our price and we're not going to negotiate, but we will, if you need to finance it, whatever. And then the cool part is it led to a phone call. So you feel like you're in control of the payment terms, but you know what? You're now on the phone with them. Like, it's brilliant, right? Because at the end of the day, you got to get them on the phone.
Exactly.
It's one thing.
I love it, and I agree. That's a hack for everybody listening. Again, don't go down to the lower price program, the lower price this. Hold steady on your price, but create different. How do you work? So now they're not evaluating whether or not they're going to buy it. What they're evaluating is how they're going to pay for it. That's a better conversation inside their head in your favor than which product they're going to buy, because confused people say no, and they're significantly more likely to get confused on should I go platinum, gold, or silver versus should I pay this upfront and get a discount over 3 months and pay a little bit more, over 12 months and pay more, but have the ability to drag it out. So yeah, I like it, Red Dog. Hold on.
Love it. Okay, so just as a quick sort of, I guess, if you give us a recap, if you will, the value from a business perspective, that discussion, and just the way that you frame that, I just think it'd be good for the listeners to sort of, have that as a framework so they have both, right? If you could just maybe.
Okay. You mean from last week, how I discussed value for business? Yeah.
They've got the business and the.
Yeah, probably a good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of frameworks, there you go. Okay. So what everybody says, like, throwaway line, just never compete on price, just add value, right? Like, and you can listen, went in depth on this last podcast. Okay. So break it down to its constituent parts, right? You got practical value, inherent value, social value, right? So, I believe that, again, value, it's like kind of like oxygen or culture, right? Like it's kind of thrown away, and it's kind of like a better, like, how do we create value? How do you communicate value? How do you amplify value? How do you multiply value, right? Like practical, 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 inherent, social, practical value. I think I used a computer and a laptop, right? So very similar in what they do, but a totally different application, right? Like one is mobile, one sits on your computer, right? Inherent value, think reliability, right? So if you hire a cleaning service, trustworthiness is going to be absolutely critical, because these people in your home, fidgeting through all your stuff, and then you're at work, you got to be able to, trust these people, right? Or maybe a better example is a daycare, right? Like most people that own a daycare, if I line them up and I say, what do your clients buy off? They'll always say location and price. They'd be dangerously wrong. The truth is accountability times a million. So picture this. Imagine Road Dog owned a daycare. I owned a daycare. They're 10 minutes down the road from one another. My daycare has a web watch where the parents could log on the internet, watch the kids, make sure they're safe, having fun. You're just missing your kid wildly, and you could pull over on the side of the road and dial in and, watch them, hanging out with the other kids, etc. Well, that's that's accountability. Like, you know what I mean? Like, imagine how much more comfortable mom feels dropping the kids off. And by the way, you don't sell to the kids, you don't sell to dad, you sell to the mom about 90% of the time. So again, your marketing needs to be geared towards mom. Or like, maybe it's like an accelerated learning center, right? Where the kids are going to go to this daycare, and they're going to go into grade 1 with the expectation that they have a grade 2 reading, math, and writing ability, right? That's a million times stronger than saying, we're a passionate husband-wife team, and we've been in business for 10 years, so you can trust us, right? It's a totally different offering. It's an accelerated learning center. It's just different, and you'll be able to charge significantly more. And it's value on steroids. Actually, it's a combination of practical and inherent value, by the way. And then there's social value. Again, this is a big part of what we talked about last week, but like gross profit margins, right? Like this is something you want to be spending time thinking through with your client. So this is when somebody's walking down the street with a Burberry purse, right? Or somebody drives a Lambo, or they have a Cartier watch. or they're living in the right neighborhood with the right zip code, right? Like that's social value, big time, right? So I'd encourage you to kind of break those down, and just be thinking about, how do you create value? How do you create how do you elevate the perception of what your client's offering, right? And by the way, right? And by the way, this is we went over this. I can't remember if I went deep, but I'm always encouraging our business coaches to do live events, right? We have a program called Live Event Mastery. When you do live events, first of all, you'll probably suck until you get really, really good, right? I can't help you with that one. It's just experience. The more you practice, though, the better you get. We give you word-for-word scripts and 104 PowerPoint slides. Everything's laid out, tickety-boo, right? If that's what you want. But the magic is that when you do a live event, you get the authority, you get the celebrity, you get the referrals, you get the JVs, the higher pricing. Like the list goes on. You get this compounding effect. The same way that money compounds, other things compound as well in your life. And I would encourage you to be thinking about that for your clients' businesses and your business. But it all takes time, and that's what most people aren't willing to put in. But you got to use time as an asset as opposed to a liability. But anyway, so coaches know it, but they just don't do it. So just the three types of value: practical, inherent, social value. And I think said it a second ago, but importantly, we got there last week by starting with profit margins, I believe. Really, just the lightweight business coach or the lightweight operator says, "Oh, we just need to raise your prices and you're going to make so much money," right? Like, I don't know and maybe that's the case and they haven't raised their prices in 3 years. But before I just go and raise their prices, what I want to do is I want to change their offering. It's going to be so much easier for them to sell it if what they're offering is significantly different, right? You want to think apples to oranges versus apples to apples, right? Like if you look at our company, there's no one in the world with profit acceleration, digital acceleration, group coaching software, like all of this stuff. There is no apples to apples, exchange. You couldn't go and compare what we're doing with what somebody else is doing, but forget us. What about your client? What about you, right? Like, how are you, kind of separating yourself? And the way you'll get there is by using your imagination, your client using their imagination to get there. So Road Dog, I like that. I think just the two. So you've got business value, and then you've got, the personal value. I think that you combine those two, and you could get to a pretty dangerous place. So there you go, Road Dog. That's my answer, and that's a bit of a recap. You like that?
I'm about to do something very dangerous, and that is I'm going to lead you. I'm going to go off of the questions that I've, and I'm going to go down a rabbit hole just for a second. Oh my God.
Let's go.
Everybody says silent prayer, but here's okay. You talk about, because we're talking about value, adding more value. We talked about, the having payment options and all that stuff, right? I just want to come back to that for a second, because you talk a lot about a race to zero and how there's certain industries and certain sort of examples of a race to zero.
Yep.
Is there? How do you know if you're in a race to zero? You know what I mean? Like,
done for you, man. Done for you is a race to zero. There's always going to be somebody willing to do it a little bit cheaper, a little bit better. They're going to add this, add that. Like done. Look, scale. Like ultimately, okay, growth. See, people, coaches again. In fact, I wrote this on my personal profile page. Anyway, so I had a couple conversations about it. But like growth and scale, right? So your business coach rolls up and tells you, "Oh, I'm going to help you scale this thing," but they don't even know what scale is, to be totally honest with you. And what it is that growth is when you grow and your expenses, if your expenses grow with your company, that's growth. That's not scale. Scale is when your company grows, but your expenses increase at a significantly smaller rate, if not stay at the same spot or even lessen because of economies of scale, right? So basically, a done for you service is just always going to be a race to zero. So basically think of this: humans are the enemy of scale. There you go. You drop the mic. That's it. So when you're constantly adding people, this is the kind of company It's not going to scale. And is that a race to zero? Not necessarily, but it's a tough one. But done for you is a race to zero. So I'd be very careful to be the done for you guy or gal. But by the way, you can start there and you build up your skills. And now you've built up your skills, and now you're dangerous, and you can kind of leverage. You go to the next level of business, right? But that's the answer, Road Dog. Is done for you is a race to zero. I'd be very cautious, and there's a lot of people that listen to us that are kind of in that kind of world. So that's it, man.
The reason I also ask is typically we find it happens a lot when you're always lowering your price. Now, coaches lower their price, right? But that's probably just more insecurity, more lack of.
It's lack. Yeah, it's what we just talked about at the beginning. Think of those 4 levels, right? That we started with on a personal level, right? So they're just, it's implementation, and then it's leadership, it's communicate. So they're stuck in number 1, and they're not moving towards number 2 and 3, and hopefully 4. You follow me? Like, they're not able to influence their client to A, spend more, B, act at a higher level. Like, there's no such thing as a bad student. There's only a bad teacher it's a throwaway line, but it's not, because if you help, when your client just says that they're overwhelmed, and then, you know what I mean? Like that's an indictment on you as the coach, not them as the client, right? You didn't structure it in such a way that they were set up to win. You follow?
Yeah, and I guess it's also a statement about themselves, right? Like, if you're constantly looking at lowering what is that saying about you in your conviction and what your offer is?
The opposite of number 4. It's moving. It's like, so again, you're just stuck in implementation land, right? Execution land. You're not using your imagination. So yeah, that's a good question, but that's it, man. Done for you is a race to zero, man.
Yeah. It's just and again, speaking from experience inside of my agency and everything else, the biggest, most dangerous thing that I've done in the past, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but I think what we do at the beginning is we overcommit on the amount of services, if you will, the amount of work that we're going to do for the client for such a low price. And then you end up having to take on so many more clients that you end up falling short on your promise of what you said you were going to deliver. So you're so much better raising your price to a point where you actually feel good about it. Because again, if you feel you're constantly grinding, if you will, and you're going to build resentment against that client because you're like, why the hell aren't they paying me more? You know what I mean? Like, so I would just say that confidence and conviction in setting your price. Like, is there a number, like what's the go-to number in your mind that a starting out coach should charge where they're not going to fall into that trap? Is it $1,000?
Yeah. Oh, difficult one. Look, coach needs $2,000 is the right amount. 24 grand a year is what I believe to be kind of on the low end, what you need to do in order to have a good living, satisfy the client at a high level. Like Road Dog, you bring up a good point what you said a minute ago. It's network effects, right? So I've talked about this, and when I run a webinar, what I did, in Cancun, one of the first things that I talked about is that, like, everybody, you'll talk to a guy who owns a business and he wants to build, a $10 million company, a $100 million company, a $1 billion company, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, if I just look at their business model, I can tell you that it's not going to work, right? And it comes back to network effects where Amazon, I teach it as a clock, right? But Amazon have got selection, and then more selection improves the customer experience, which means that, like, when my wife buys my daughter a reborn doll, and then my daughter wants to get a house or new clothes or shoes for her reborn doll, my wife goes back to Amazon because she doesn't want to get in the car and drive to Toys R Us and then work out if it's going to be there. She jumps on Amazon, convenience and delivery, right? And she knows it's going to be there. So the traffic is level 3, right? So you got selection, improves the customer experience, which increases the traffic, my wife going back. And then at 9 o'clock, as in step number 4, it's more sellers, because you got that guy that says, I'm not selling on Amazon, I'm not selling on Amazon, I'm not selling on Amazon. And magically they are selling on Amazon, which increases the selection, which I'm back at 1 o'clock, right? Selection, customer experience, traffic, and then more sellers. So what happens is Amazon's model actually speeds up and expands as a clock versus a consultant. If you can follow me, and go 1, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock, or maybe I guess it's 12 o'clock. Sorry, it's 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. So with a business consultant, a digital agency, a business a business coach, you've got clients as 12 o'clock. They're all looking for new clients. And then you've got available time where Amazon had customer experience. We've got available time, right? There's only so much time in a day and a week. And then you've got the client's wants and needs. What you just described is the more clients you take on, does the wants and needs go up or down? Clearly goes up, right? Well, then what happens at 9 o'clock? It's customer experience, which is fine when you've got, let's say that you max out at 20 clients. Well, what happens at 21? The clock starts going anti-clockwise. What happens at 23? And then 25? And then 30? Now the clock is reversing on itself, right? So that's where Road Dogg done for you, because what happens, that I just described why done for you is a race to zero, because you just can't, the more clients basically make it impossible to fulfill, and then someone else will always come and just do a little bit cheaper. So anyways, that's the reason right there is why we built group coaching software. Just described it, but that's.
Do you think the group model is more the way to go in the future then? Because as you're saying this, I'm thinking to myself, how can I speed up the clock?
Yeah, 100% group. Drop the mic. We have 1,000 clients around the world that we're active today as I speak over that. It's a group coaching program, right? It's really what it is. But we build assets and obviously an insane amount of value in and around it. So absolutely, if you want to do 7 figures with your coaching, I mean, when you go to UPW to a large, Tony Robbins, let's call it Robbins University. It's a big group coaching program. It's really what it is. And he just frames it up differently. And the more you pay Tony Robbins, the more access you get to him, right? The closer you get. I don't want to go into that. That's the way it works. So if somebody's listening and they legitimately, they've got the multiple 6-figure coaching business and they want to hit 7 figures, what you got to do is they pay for access is the way you'd frame it up as a framework in your head, right? The more they pay you, the closer they get to you. But yeah, absolutely group. That's not to say you don't do one-to-one. Tony Robbins has one-to-one clients, right? He just charges an absolute bucket load, and he's got a waiting list to do. So it's not to say you don't do one-to-one, but they're getting serious access. They need to pay big bickies. So that's the answer there, Shoots.
With that, just real quick, because I know we're up against the clock here a little bit, but I know that when you say group, of course group, that's the way to scale, that's the way to grow, that's the way to maximize, speed up the clock and network effects, all of that, right? Makes sense. Get it, love it, and I understand it. But there's a lot of, I don't know if you agree with this, there's a lot of perception out there that group coaching is not nearly as valuable as one-on-one coaching.
Yep.
How can I possibly command, what currently I may charge for my one-on-one clients in a group environment? Is there value in a group?
Yep. Okay. Love it, by the way. And you just took the conversation outside of the head of most listening. So here it is. You look, step number 4 of elevating your ability to earn on a personal level, increase value on a personal level is what? Imagination, right? So what you've got to do no, it's the opposite, Road Dogg, and I get it. But basically, the more people that are in your group, where did I write this? Oh, I was writing a guided tour. Okay, so a guided tour for something we're doing. But so the more people in the program, the more camaraderie, the more relationships, the more partnerships, the more masterminding, the higher level of questions. So you know what I mean? Imagine this dynamic. You've got 100 people on 10, 25, 50, 100 people on a group coaching call. Let's assume you got 100. Well, when somebody asks a question and then we throw it to the group with 100 people, without knowing, but couldn't we ascertain that we would get a higher level bit of masterminding and a higher level answer with 100 people listening? Let's say I got a question about a mortgage broker and then, my mortgage broker client, and then we have a coach. that was a mortgage broker for 15 years, and we open up the line and then they solve the problem right there. That's the kind of, so you do with group coaching, the more, like now that we have 1,000 coaches, our program works so much better than when it had 100, right? Like, and make no mistake about it, our clients, and obviously, you know, a lot of really, really high end, like a lot of the highest end coaches in the world use our stuff, right? It's probably no secret by now. Well, basically they're solving problems for our clients. Sort of like, we're not even involved. The staff of the company aren't even involved, and our clients are solving happily, by the way, because they love to contribute and it's a community. They're solving problems on behalf of our company for us. And you know, they're talking about hypnosis. They're talking about NLP. They're talking about, you know, whatever the individual, like, in fact, you know, Tom Cavanaugh, he's listening here, NLP superstar, right? So when I have an NLP question and I can open up Tom, you know what I mean? Like, this is next level, right? Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, I know NLP, okay, but like, I'm not an expert. So anyway, so that's how you increase the value. The more people, the higher level of value, the end. So I get it, but that's a conversation. It's state story strategy. That's a story inside the coach's head, because quite frankly, they don't. Level number 3 is influence and the ability to lead. They don't feel, frankly, the limiting belief in the story in their head is they don't believe that they have the ability to lead and direct a large group, is where that comes from. So there you go.
And just on an aside from my perspective, when it comes to group, by the way, 2 things. One, you build that culture, and there's natural friendships and relationships that are just growing inside of that they don't want to leave. So your stickiness factor, if you will,
100%,
right? The retention goes way up.
Road Dog, there's some, I want to, I said this in Cancun, and I said, hopefully, so this is one, again, so I did a presentation, right? I plunked this up on the slide, and I said something to the effect of, hopefully I'll say something a little more impressive than this, but I don't know that I can say anything more impactful from this, so I hope you take it away, and it's this. They stay because they like you. So it sounds like a throwaway line. It is the opposite. Like, there's a reason Frank Kern brings you to his house. There's a reason, like, you know, if you don't have like a personal relationship with your clients, you're missing out on, because a lot of coaches without, you know, high level of experience, etc., they actually want to have like this separation, right? Like they won't friend them on Facebook, or whatever. They've got this, again, it's a story. They stay because they like you. Take that one to the bank, right? So if you're not going to their house, they're not going to your house. And that might be do you need to go to that level? Not necessarily, but if you do, your retention is going to be significantly higher. They stay because they like you.
Okay, so this is going to lead us into next week's real nice, because we're going to talk about balance and sort of balancing your clients' lives with their business lives next week. But the beauty that, like, as we're going down this path, it's just it's such a fine line, like, because a big part of me is thinking, boy, oh boy, if you don't want to be even Facebook friends, and how fake is that 99.9% of the time? But like, you're not even wanting to be Facebook friends with people. Are you not just setting yourself for a business that you're just going to hate? Like, you're going to hate working with these people? Like, you want to know what your clients are up to, and you want to celebrate their wins, and you're going to want to see them succeed in life, aren't you? Like, isn't that the whole, like, come on, man. Like, don't set yourself up to a business you're going to hate.
Road Dog, I hear you, man. High five. And I'd say it's all, I tell you, if we line up 100 people suffering from what you're describing, it's all fear-based, 100%. They don't feel like they're enough. And then when they cancel, they feel like they would look too great as fears that you're not enough and you're going to lose love. And it's all based. That's why they don't friend them, right? Because they're going to cancel. They're going to take love away. I'm not going to be enough. I don't want it to play out in a public forum, like in their subconscious mind. This is what they're playing out. It's all fear-based, man. It's all fear-based. And yeah, definitely do the opposite. You know, throw yourself. You want to learn to swim, jump in the deep end of the pool. You want to learn how to speak French, drop yourself in Paris. Total. It's like Tony Robbins talks about total immersion, right? Like he doesn't do a 2 hour rah session, right? He brings you and it's like 50 hours and he keeps you there until 1 a.m., right? Total immersion. That's, just go all, you want to be a business coach. Again, the mistake Road Dog people make is they become a business coach and it's like that's the 90-day mark. They're deciding if they're going to keep going. Right. And I laugh and it's like, oh man, like what you gotta, it comes from your soul, right? Like it's either you or it's not. And then for most of it, like for lots it is, but then they fight it instead of do what we just described, right? And totally embrace it. So you know what I mean? Road Dog, like at the 90-day mark, when you're thinking about whether or not you're making enough money to continue, we got a problem.
So hang on a second. What's the throwaway line? They won't know. They won't care how much you know until they know how much
you know how much you care. Yeah, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Yeah.
Dude, that's such a throwaway line too, but it's so powerful when you actually break that up.
Yep. Okay. It would fall into that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So, yeah, man, it's that's it. I love it, buddy. But just throw your this is either you or it's not. And then you're thinking like, are you going to be able to scale? Are you going to be able to create this group coaching? Are you going to be able to lead them? And I just go back to, if this is in your soul, you're absolutely going to be able to do it. But if you're measuring each month how much money you're making, and then that's what's determining whether you're going to continue, just again, this is a recipe for disaster. And then you're going to go to the next thing, by the way, right? And then it's going to be the next thing. The next thing, 5 years has passed and you still haven't found your thing, and you're wondering what happened. And it's just that lack. And it was all fear-based, right? Because again, you were, oh my God, I'm not enough. I'm not, you know what I mean? This isn't what I'm meant to do. I don't know. There you go, Road Dog.
All right. Well, we could banter on and on. It's just funny because I've got one of my coaches in my mind, and I'll censor it because he likes to swear a lot. But it's just like, why my stuff works? He's like, my stuff works because I give a crap. And to such a degree, when he is in coach mode, and you see him work and dive deep into somebody and just pour, like what he pours into that person that's in front of him, no one else, right there in front of him, it'll give you goosebumps just even watching it. So that's another question there. Like, would somebody get goosebumps watching your level of passion and care working with somebody? But anyways, close us out. What's one thing today? Because we've got a million, bro. There's a lot here, but what's one thing?
I think I didn't. So the 4, we kind of just came back to it a few times, but just understanding on a personal level, right? You want to make some changes. You want to elevate your income. You want to elevate your coaching business. You want to elevate the clients. I got a really cool email. Might have come out today. Might come out tomorrow. Can't remember. But it's just about like the best way to attract the best clients is like they're attracted to who you are, right? Like your spirit. And it's hard. And again, almost sounds a little bit like a throwaway line. I promise you, it's so far from, it's freaking scary. But it takes time, and time, you need to use it as an asset, not a liability. So those 4, like if you want to elevate, the spirit of, what and who you are, it sounds a little bit, how you doing, but it comes from a very loving place. It's 1, implementation. It's 2, leadership, management, right? 3, communication and influence. And then 4, imagination. And that's the Mac Daddy, right? So if you want to add more value, you want to really elevate, you got to go to number 4. But there's also a little bit of a 1, 2, 3, 4, like jumping from 1 to 4. I kind of mentioned that earlier. I don't know if that's the best advice to be giving people as a framework. I feel like you gotta go execute and do the thing, and then you got to help others do the thing, and then you need to learn to communicate and influence, like lead, make your money through communication and through your ability to influence and have people inspired by you, and then imagination is where you can bring them all together and really crush it. So I think there's power in that, Road Dog. That's what I think, bud. There you go.
You went from like woo woo to like to 90s rap. With, like, oh my God.
That's what I do.
Right,
Ice, baby.
listen,
I didn't
next
do that,
week,
did I?
listen
Did that
live
happen?
next week for Carl's live reading of
That happened, Shoots. That happened. You heard it here first.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, we're just hoping that we both elevate, and especially in the tech department, because that's apparently some freaking.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
All right. Well, now that I've got Carl all depressed about how brutal he is with tech after dropping all of these great bombs for all of us to implement to our businesses this week, let's go ahead and implement. And again, thanks for tuning into another episode of Business Coaching Secrets with the man on top of the hill, the tech kingpin himself, King Karl. And if you're not on the inside getting access to the pre-show, or you aren't getting Karl's daily emails, or just want more information on the group coaching software and all of these other great things that Karl keeps mentioning, visit focus.com and subscribe today. And if you enjoyed the podcast, of course, please share with any fellow coach or someone you think might make a great coach. And of course, as always, we'd appreciate if you'd rate this episode, as we know that all the streaming services give an insane amount of weight towards review. And hey, we're trying to be moving up the charts there too. So please leave us a review. And that is it for another week. And remember, folks, progress equals happiness. Take care, buddy. We'll see you in the next episode.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0 to train business coaches how to find any small business owner more than $100,000 in 45 minutes without them spending an extra dollar on marketing or advertising. This becomes a business coach's superpower. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.